Hello folks, it is 2020, a brand new year, and you know what a new year means? New Year's resolutions. Yeah. A time to reflect on yourself and think about how you can be better. Whether it's an old habit to kick or a new commitment to try and stick to, New Year's resolutions give you something to aim for, a goal, something that you've set yourself to achieve. And importantly, they let you reflect on what you do now and compare it to what you would like to do instead. Every single year I make a list of about 8 New Year's resolutions. 8 because it gives me many opportunities to try and complete at least one of those New Year's resolutions. I'm not going to bore you with those ones in this video. Instead, I want to talk about my other list, my New Year's coding resolutions. So, for the first time in 2020, let's roll that intro. Check out my DroidCon shirt! Hey folks, my name is Ben and welcome back to the channel. I hope you haven't missed me too much. I spent some much needed time off during Christmas and New Year, but now I'm back. And this year I plan on putting a lot of effort into this channel and making it as good as it possibly could be. And in fact, one of my personal goals this year will be to try and get 1,000 subscribers to this channel by the end of the year, if it's possible. But it really doesn't matter, it's just a number, it's just an ambitious target that I set for myself to see if I can do it. Anyway, let's talk about New Year's coding resolutions, or coding New Year's resolutions, or new coding year's resolutions. What I want to do is tell you about my New Year's coding resolutions, give you a really cool framework that can help you make realistic and objective New Year's resolutions and tasks, and show you how I might go about starting to tackle those New Year's resolutions. So, if I just take you into my terminal here, I will show you my actual list of New Year's coding resolutions. A little while ago, I created my own terminal to-do program that tracks my to-do jobs that I have to do. And I added like different kind of lists to it and colors and formatting and all that kind of stuff. And as I've been going through this past year, I've been jotting things down into the learn list about things that I want to learn. I also use this learn list as a sort of in the future to do better at kind of thing. So like item 7, for example, better code, comment and documentation. That's nothing really to learn, it's just more of I need to change how I approach coding and a mindset change. So the learn list here on the screen is essentially my New Year's coding resolution list. You don't have to just have one New Year's resolution, right? And as you can probably tell immediately, a lot of them are just for me to learn certain things or new technologies. If I just take you through this list quickly and explain a little bit about each point. So the first one, pip and Python stuff. I want to learn about Python programming. I can do a very small amount of basic Python programming, but nothing complex and nothing useful really. And pip, the Python package manager, I'd love to learn and understand how that works as well. And one of the main things that really annoys me and confuses me about Python is the difference between Python 2 and Python 3. What makes them different? Which is the popular one to use? Which is the one that most people use? And also understand which is the one that I should use and which is the most portable version of Python. And at the end of that to-do item is the words beautiful soup, which is a really cool Python library that lets you do lots of web scraping stuff. So you can use Beautiful Soup and Python's requests library to query web pages and then scrape some information or data from those web pages. The next one down is just Docker completely. Docker is massive at the moment, in and out of industry, and I'd love to just really understand how to use it so that I can become proficient in it. From the brief exposure that I've had of Docker, I want to learn about containers, how to spin them up, how to rip them down, how to control them, and also importantly, how to integrate them into AWS. Which brings me nicely onto the next to-do, which is about AWS and specifically IAM and EC2. After that, I've even included a URL for the next one. I want to learn about how to create brew packages. So I am primarily at work and at home a Mac user, although of course I would prefer to use a GNU Linux distribution, but that's a video for another time. So whilst I'm a Mac user, I'd really like to learn a bit more about the homebrew system and how to create my own brew packages. and hopefully deploy one or two if possible. Dagger is the next one, and it actually should say Dagger 2, but it doesn't matter. Dagger is a dependency injection framework for Android. Obviously at work I am an Android developer, and Dagger is one of those really annoying things that I've just not had time to properly learn and understand, and is massive in our app and in many different apps across the industry. So I'd really love to get hands-on and fully understand Dagger so that I can completely use it without a second thought and not have to just copy and paste lines of code from the internet and not fully understand what they do. The next one is learn Ruby. Ruby, of course, is a programming language. I've not had that deeper dive into it yet, but from what I can tell, it's quite cool and relatively simple. But a lot of cool apps and pieces of software use it, especially one called Fastlane, which is a really integral piece of software that we use, particularly in work, to help us deploy our apps automatically and a bunch of other things as well. So yeah, I'd like to learn Ruby, and maybe even I could contribute to that Fastlane project. That'd be really cool. And the last one, again, isn't one particularly to learn. It's more of a change of a mindset, change of approach. And that's, I want to be better at commenting my code. I'm really bad at that. I'll just write code and sort of move on and keep going because I want to try and make more cooler things as opposed to sort of really consolidate the things that I've done so far. And of course, packaged with that comes better documentation or documentation altogether. I am a particularly bad culprit for not documenting my code or the things that I've written. So this year, I really want to make an effort to do more of that. So those are my sort of high-level goals or things that I want to achieve or things that I want to change for my New Year's coding resolutions or techie resolutions. But some of them aren't particularly specific, and some of them don't have like a finish point, an end point to them, so that I can say, oh yes, I have done that thing, I've completed that thing. So I want to tell you about a really cool framework to help you build objectives, and this is something that I learned back when I was training to be a teacher. This framework is called S.M.A.R.T objectives. So when you're creating goals or objectives, you should use the S.M.A.R.T framework, and this framework should help you create decent goals that actually are like achievable and that you can see have made a difference. So the 5 letters are S for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for realistic, and T for time bound. These 5 elements together will help you create really decent objectives. I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to read more about SMART objectives, and you can use them anywhere in life that you have some sort of task or goal or mission to achieve. Specific helps you really narrow down your scope. Some of these big resolutions of mine, like Docker completely, is massive, and if I be more specific about talking about containers and stuff, that might help me learn it better. Measurable is really important to see when we're reflecting if we have actually achieved the goal, if something has changed, using numbers and metrics to actually measure the difference. Achievable, again, is super important. Is your task far too big and too grand? Are you able to actually complete it in the time given? Make sure it's achievable. Smaller, many chunks is better than one massive chunk. Realistic, of course, do you have the resources? Do you have the money? Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Do you have all of the things you need to actually achieve that? Is it something that's actually within your control? And the last one, which is really important, is time bound or timed. At some point, your objective has to come to an end, whether you've completed it or if you failed it. With this framework, you can turn high-level ideas into SMART objectives. So how might I use SMART objectives for each one of my resolutions to turn them into actual achievable goals? Let's take this Learn Ruby one to start with. Learn Ruby is a massive task. I need to be more specific to start off with. So if I'm being specific, I'll use some of my previous programming knowledge to help me with this. I might break this task down into, for example, learn about loops in Ruby, or learn about variables, for example, in Ruby. Those are nice, smaller tasks, and they're more specific. Measurable's a little bit tricky with this one, but there's one metric that is relatively self-explanatory, and that's, can I code a small program with these things? So right now, I cannot start up a Ruby program with loops or variables in it. I don't know how to do that. I don't know the syntax. I wouldn't know how to begin. So measurable is, can I code a small program that loops around an array of int variables or something like that and prints them out. That's measurable. Achievable. Am I attempting too much here With my new specific task, I don't think so. I think that's quite small, and in fact, the timeline for that will be quite small as well. So I'm just going to put yes. I don't know if that's the right thing to do for Achievable, but I think it's small enough that it's absolutely doable. Realistic. Do I have the resources, time, and energy to do that task? So absolutely yes. I have Ruby installed on this machine already, I have access to an IDE, I can type on a keyboard, and I have some basic computer knowledge to help me run that program and sort of avoid the basic obstacles when it comes to learning about loops and variables in Ruby. So yes, it's realistic. And then timed, I need to sort of estimate a time frame for this, or at least say a cut-off point for when I should have learned Ruby by, or more specifically, learned about loops in Ruby and variables. So using my previous programming knowledge, I'm going to say that that's probably quite a small, easy task now. And realistically, I could actually get that done within maybe a few hours, or a day, or a week. But this is my New Year's coding resolutions we're talking about. So the time deadline for all of my New Year's coding resolutions will be the end of 2020. So I'm going to put the end of 2020. To give myself lots of time to be able to learn about loops and variables in Ruby. Okay, so hopefully the idea of the SMART objectives framework is understandable. For me, I have a quick and dirty, easy way to apply the SMART objective framework to all of these tasks in one fell swoop. I'm going to start with the T and go backwards to the S. For all of these things, T, the time that I'm allowing myself to do these New Year coding resolutions in, is this entire year. So by the end of 2020, I will have completed all of these New Year's resolutions, which of course I'll make more specific in a minute. Realistic. Each one of these individual tasks is absolutely realistic to try and do. Some of them are massive, like the Docker completely one, for example, but within the 1 year time frame is absolutely realistic. Again, achievable. All of them are achievable, especially within the time frame I've given myself. M for measurable is a little bit more tricky with all of these tasks, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of a cop-out clause, if you like. For me, looking at this list now, I could do some of the things very slightly, but not completely to the full effort and understanding level that I would like. So what I'm going to do is for each of these, I'm going to create a YouTube video. I'm going to create a YouTube video explaining some part of that technology. For example, if it's pip and Python, then I'm going to do a video on pip and Python. Because obviously for a video, I need to have my shit together so that I don't look like an idiot in front of all of you lot. And of course, so that I'm explaining everything correctly and you're learning the right things. So for specific, let's talk about each one of them as quick as possible. So for the first one, pip and Python and beautiful soup. At work, we have several dashboards that have information on them. Without going too much into detail, there's some data on a site that I want to be able to access, but it doesn't have a public API for me to query. So what I want to do is to use Python and beautiful soup to create a Python application that web scrapes from that website to give me the data that I can then put onto those dashboards. For the Docker completely task, I'd love to be able to use the Docker command line tool completely from the terminal, so to be able to know what every argument and parameter and option is within that. And I'd also like to take the aforementioned dashboards at work and Dockerize them so that I can deploy the Docker image of the dashboard wherever I like. AWS, IAM, and EC2, the specifics of this is relatively straightforward. I had a website, unfortunately I've let it die now. I don't still pay for the hosting of that, but I've still got the web domain. What I'd like to do is to move that website completely to be hosted in an Amazon EC2 instance with all the correct IAM permissions and roles attached to it. Brew is nice and easy too. This to-do application that I've been showing you with my New Year's resolution list in, which is one that I wrote myself, I would like to put that into a Brew package so that other people can access and use it. In fact, I'll even add a link in the description down below to my C++ to-do application in the terminal, in case you'd like to see the code. Be warned though, at the time of making this video, there is no README file in that repository. I'm sorry, again, that speaks to the last objective, the last New Year's resolution I have about making code comments and documentation better, so I'll try and get around to that as well. Specifics of the Dagger objective is a little bit more tricky. We use Dagger 2 at work for our Android application, and I have to be honest, the majority of the Dagger annotations and how it all works and links together with different modules and all that kind of stuff is completely confusing to me most of the time. So my specific objective here is just to fully understand our complete Dagger implementation at work as a start. The specific Ruby task is nice and easy. I would love to contribute to the Fastlane project on GitHub. Again, description in the link down below. And finally, better code comments and documentation. I already spoke about my C++ to-do application that I've wrote in the terminal that doesn't have a README file, and in fact the help argument and function that it executes is incomplete as well, so I need to do that. But I'll add on to that more specifically every time I'm making a pull request or I've made a code change at work or on one of my side projects. I need to have added in at least 1 or 2 comments and of course documented any new feature that I put in. It's going to be a bit of a mindset change, that last one, and probably the most difficult one to achieve. Anyway, that's my New Year's coding resolutions list for you, and a brief explanation of the SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-boxed, to help you make better, more achievable objectives. And of course, a little glimpse into the future of this channel. Hopefully there'll be a bunch of videos about my New Year's coding resolutions, and I'll try and keep you up to date on my progress. If you've made some New Year's coding resolutions yourself, please let me know what they are in the comments down below. I'd love to hear about some of yours. I think I've blabbed on long enough, so let's end the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was entertaining or useful in some way. If you enjoy what I do on this channel, then please hit that subscribe button, and of course, hit that bell icon if you want to be notified when I release new videos. Speaking of releasing new videos, in 2019 I was trying to do it every single week. This year I'm going to try my best to keep to a weekly release schedule if I can, but unfortunately life is getting in the way and I'm incredibly busy. So if I don't release a video one week, then at least my guarantee is every other week. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at my Twitter at Ben_Kadel. And of course, feel free to ask me about my progress on my New Year's coding resolutions. Thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year, everyone, and see you next time. Yeah? So,